my people, how you doing? I hope you're having a fantastic damn day. Welcome back to the channel. Today I'll be showing you how you can replicate and recreate Unai Emery's 4-4-1-1 set of tactics in the game FC24. Obviously for the likes of Aston Villa, recently beating Arsenal. I mean, that was yesterday. And then of course, a few days ago, they also absolutely destroyed Manchester City. I know the scoreline was only 1-0, but like many people say all over Twitter and all over, you know, the tacticos and everything, they absolutely outplayed what Manchester City had to throw at them. So I'll be showing you ways that you can replicate that, as well as setting up their pressing system. So more or less what they'll look to try and revert into when they are looking to try and press the opposition very aggressively and trying to win that ball back, and then obviously trying to transition into the attacking phase of things. So starting off with the base formation, the 4-4-1-1, there's been no real changes to it. I've just gone with the 4-4-1-1 midfield, so that means that there's no centre forward, it's a cam, of course your Tielemans. So it's one goalkeeper, two centre backs, two full backs, two central midfielders, two wide midfielders, one attacking midfielder, and then of course one striker. Now of course, with the tactics going forward, I did say that they were very much a counter-attacking team when they set up with the 4-4-2 formation when I last did Aston Villa and looked to try and, you know, replicate their tactics. At that point in the season, they were looking to largely try and counter and work the ball into the likes of Watkins and Diaby, but now they've become a bit more aggressive, a bit more tactically astute. Unai Emery, he's developed and evolved his tactics a bit more. So I think for the tactical vision going forward, I think it's set to gegenpressing. I think they do look to try and, you know, hound the opposition, make sure it's very hard for the opposition to try and play through them, or even have the ball and have a bit of time and space on it. So they look to try and, you know, close down as many gaps and spaces as possible, cutting out and intercepting all the passing angles and lanes, and just making it very hard for the opposition to try and build up their offensive outlets. As for the defense and the defensive style, I've set to pressing after possession loss. Again, it goes hand in hand with the gegenpressing system, but again, it does look to try and create that high energy, high tempo, high work ethic approach to what you're trying to do on the defensive side of things. As for the team width, they like to remain very compact at the back, making sure it's very hard for the opposition to try and get bodies and fit passes through those central areas of the pitch, as well as trying to get in between the defenders in the back line. And then as for the depth, this has been made quite aware. I don't know if you don't know about this, well, you must be hiding under a rock, but Aston Villa's incredibly high line that they are playing, it is working to full effect, helping the fullbacks pin the opposition back in their own half at times. And even when they are beaten, they look to try and, you know, catch the opposition off with an offside trap or potentially something like that. But more times than not, the defense is very much intact with each other, looking to stay in a line together, looking to try and shift up the field or down the field when applicable. So again, with the high line, I've set it to 85. You can probably jumble around with it a little bit, maybe dropping it to around a 75. Still creating that high line approach, but nonetheless, I think high line is the way to go with this offensive set of tactics that we're going with. And speaking of offensive, for the offense build-up and the play and so on, I've gone with fast-paced build-up. Of course, it does go with the gegenpressing style and pressing and all that good stuff, as well as the chance creation is set to direct passing, looking to get those runners in behind the likes of Watkins, as well as Diaby, or if you are playing the likes of Bailey as that right midfielder, 100% they'll look to try and make those breaking runs in behind the opposition's defense, looking to try and exploit them at times. Of course, you do have willing passes, the likes of McGinn, Louise and Kamara, all very good at being able to spray that ball high and wide or potentially over the opposition's backline at times, as well as the likes of Pau Torres. So very willing players that can play that long ball in behind. As for the width, I've gone with 65. They don't look to try and, you know, stretch and play solely on the outskirts of the field and trying to work the ball into the wingers all the time. They do look to try and, you know, mix it up a bit, and that's why I've gone with 65 width. As for players in the box, they do try and flood the box, whether it's with fullbacks in those wider areas or whether it's your front four or your front three at times in that attacking space, trying to get on the end of those crosses or pullbacks or cutback opportunities. They'll look to try and, you know, make the most of those attacking outlets. And then as for corners and free kicks, as always, it's a channel favorite. I've gone with it set to 4. Now onto the instruction side of things, we'll start off with the goalkeeper, of course, Emi Martinez. He's set to come for crosses, very good at claiming those aerial balls. Also a bit of a shit house at times, but I love that. Unless it's against Man United, who are absolutely dreadful at the moment. But nonetheless, he's going to be able to claim those aerial balls that are whipped into the box. Of course, when you are playing a very compact back line, and just a compact system on the defensive side of things, those balls will have a bit more space in those wide areas to eventually be whipped into the box. So you need a very active and proactive goalkeeper, and I think Emi Martinez best suits that. And then as for saving outside of the box, he is going to be a bit more of a new age goalkeeper, the sweeper keeper. Of course, you are playing a very high line, so you need him to be able to be, like I said earlier, reactive, proactive, and be able to make those runs off of his line, claim those balls, pass them back into the possession of your centre backs or your midfield, or even potentially playing a ball over the top to your willing and on running players into the opposition's back line and trying to exploit that space. So he can very much do that. Also, very good with the ball at his feet, being able to pass out from the back. Into your back line now, of course, you've got Torres and Diego Carlos. No real changes to them, I will say that. You don't need them to do too much. I think with Torres, he's a bit more of the ball-playing centre-back, so if you can work the ball into your left-hand channel a bit more and then have him try and dictate the play and maybe have a potential over-the-top ball for one of your runners in Watkins or Diaby. But yes, I think Torres is the go-to man when trying to play out and build that offensive platform when you build up your play from the back. Into your fullbacks now, of course, Digne and Konsa. Now, Konsa and Digne, they have very different roles, and we will talk about what happens when Matty Cash does come into the side. Of course, there's a few rotational changes that you need to make, but as for the likes of Digne, he's set to join the attack and overlap, consistently looking to try and create that space and width down the left-hand side, as well as the ability for him to stick to his position. As for the likes of your right back now, with Konsa, not always looking to get forward. Of course, he is a centre-back that can play in that right-back department, so Emery has been using him there, especially in the bigger games. I have noticed this. Konsa is the favourite of the two right-backs that they potentially have between him and Cash, especially for those bigger games, like I say. Those back post controlled areas is what Konsa is really good at. Of course, he's very physical. I think he's 6'1" as well, so he can win those back post duels. So he's going to be able to stay back while attacking, not always venturing too far forward, as well as his run type is set to invert. So more or less trying to create that back three system that you sometimes do see when Digne does bomb on. So that's more or less what you're going for. And then, of course, you want him to be a bit more aggressive because he's not going to be getting that far forward. You want him to be able to step up and impose himself on the opposition player. Now into the midfield, we've got the likes of Kamara, Tielemans, as well as Douglas Luiz as your midfield three, and then of course your wider midfielders. But we'll start off with Kamara, of course, a very natural DM, and because he is playing slightly higher up the field, it does encourage the aggressive press and nature of the side, but you still want him to be able to pick up those deeper positions. So in order to do that, we've gone with him to stay back while attacking, so not being that involved with it, as well as the ability for him to get onto the edge of the box and look to try and rotate the play, trying to work it into the likes of Diaby or Watkins in certain areas of the field. Normal interceptions though, I to be honest, I know you are trying to implement a very aggressive counter press, but you do need a bit more of defensive stability in your midfield, as well as the likes of Tielemans and Douglas Luiz. They'll be the aggressors in trying to implement that press. You want Kamara to more or less try and keep his position and make sure he's trying to shield the backline as best as he can. Of course, he is out of position, essentially, playing as that central midfielder, so you don't want to have him do too much and more or less open up your midfield. His defensive positioning, speaking of which, is set to cover the centre, looking to try and clog those central areas of the pitch, as well as the positioning freedom, very structurally sound, is set to stick to position. As for your other central midfielder now, Douglas Luiz, having a bit more freedom to get forward, be a bit more involved in the attack when required. So he is set to having a balanced attack, a bit more of that box-to-box role. That's what we're trying to replicate here. The ability for him to stay on the edge of the box looking to rotate play or potentially fire shots off. I mean, I think he's got like 6 or 7 goals this season from, obviously from outside of the box scoring opportunities. Sometimes obviously breaking into the box himself, but nonetheless very good at doing so. And like I said earlier, he's going to be a bit more of the aggressor of the two central midfielders, looking to aggressively implement those tactics of trying to implement that counter press. As for the defensive positioning, just like with Kamara, it's set to cover the center, looking to try and clog those central areas. And then for the positioning freedom, I've gone with him to have a free roam role, having him pop up in those little half spaces in and around the opposition's box at times, pulling out players, having the ability to interchange with John McGinn or with the likes of Tielemans in certain moments. Like I say, you want to have a bit more of a freer style of football when higher up the field. And we do see the likes of Luiz drifting in and out of those wider areas as well as that number 10 role in certain moments. So that's more or less what you're trying to replicate with that. And then moving on to the likes of Yuri Tielemans, the number 10, of course. He's set to come back on defense, looking to also add another layer of protection to that backline, essentially, and also having the ability to drop a bit deeper, pulling the opposition's backline, maybe one of their centre backs, pulling them out of position, or maybe even their number 6, opening up a bit more space for the likes of Diaby, Watkins, McGinn, and so on to try and work into. As for the support on crosses, he's not going to look to break into the box always. He is set to stay on the edge of the area, looking to try and rotate the play. And then the drift wide approach. Now, when they set up with their 4-4-2 formation, it's either the likes of Tielemans or the likes of, Jacob Ramsey or so on that will play in this role, and they do tend to drift into those wider regions, and the likes of Diaby and Watkins do tend to stay up front. So you're more or less trying to replicate that in certain moments by having your number 10 drift into those wider channels, mainly the right-hand side, and having your right-hand sided midfielder drift into those central channels. It does create a lot of confusion for the opposition's backline, creates mismatches, switches of play when they're not supposed to, and all in all, it creates a lot of chaos, opening up a lot of space for your attackers to try and look to exploit. As for the interceptions, like Kamara is going to be set to the normal, Tielemans and Douglas Luiz, they'll be set to the aggressors of the interceptions, looking to try and create havoc in that central area of the pitch. Now, out wide to the left and the right midfielders, very different roles. You will definitely see the difference between the two. And I think with the last set of instructions and these instructions, I think for McGinn especially, it's more or less the same. You don't really want him to do too many things different. You want him to be able to obviously help out on the defensive side of things, be a bit more involved in the central areas, linking up more effectively with the likes of Luiz and Kamara and Tielemans, coming inside a bit more. So in order to do that, he's set to come back on defense, cutting inside and then coming short, linking up a bit more with the midfield. And then of course looking to try and implement his work rates and his style of play. Aggressive interceptions are set to be on form. And then of course his innate nature to be able to break into the box and score goals. I mean, we saw against Arsenal last night, he broke into the box, got on the ball, fired it home. They ended up winning 1-0. So you want him to be able to replicate that more times than not. Onto the right-hand side now, the likes of Moussa Diaby or potentially the likes of Leon Bailey. Their roles won't change, so it doesn't matter if it's Diaby or Bailey, they'll still have the same set of instructions. So as for the defensive support, I've gone with it set to basics. So sometimes, yes, looking to work back, help out a bit more. Other times, looking to be a bit more of the outlet ball, linking up with Ollie Watkins. For the chance creation, I've gone with it to having a balanced approach. So sometimes having the ability to hold the wide right channel. Other times looking to come inside, cut inside a bit more, get shots off for himself. But most importantly, and you'll see this with Ollie Watkins as well, the ability to use the pace and stretch the opposition's backline, making those runs in behind is so essential to open up a bit more space for your midfield as well. Aggressive interceptions are set to be on form, as well as having a balanced approach for the crossing run. So sometimes breaking into the box, other times looking to hang on the edge of the area, maybe drawing out opposition players, and then opening up space for other players to try and work into. And then finally, we have got the likes of Ollie Watkins as our superstar striker, having a fantastic season. Honestly, he is. For the support runs, it's set to a balance width, so he does have the ability to drift into those wider channels, mainly the left-hand side. He does like to do that. But just like with Diaby, the ability to get in behind is so important and essential. So make sure that he is making those runs in behind more times than not. Aggressive interceptions are set to be on, looking to try and press the opposition and force them into errors and mistakes when required. And then finally, the ability for him to stay forward, not looking to always come back and help out always, I suppose, having the ability to be a bit more of the outlet ball and then trying to spring counter attacks and fast transition attacks. So obviously, if you do make rotations, the likes of Matty Cash comes in for the likes of Konsa. There's no other real changes that they frequently make and chop and change between the two. And even if they do, I would still assume that those roles remain the same. So the main changes here are Konsa for Cash. So when Matty Cash does come in, he does take a bit more of that bombing on fullback role. So he will be set to join the attack and overlap, as well as stick to position, just like with Digne, adding a bit more flair and pace down the right-hand flank this time, and adding a bit more to the attacking outlets of the side. So yes, guys, if you do switch to the 4-1-3-2 formation, it's not really a formation that they look to use. It's more of, I've created this to try and implement the pressing structure and style that they are looking to try and replicate. And it's a very aggressive style, of course. It's a front two with a three just in behind them, making it very hard to try and play out from the back. And more times than not, they will look to implement this with the goalkeeper restarts, playing it out from the back for the opposition. trying to win that ball nice and aggressively high up the field. So with the formation going forward, I've gone with a 4-4-2 holding, and I've really just altered a few positions to this, unique formation. I've brought in the wider midfielders, making them a bit more central, clogging up those central areas of the pitch, making it very hard to play through the lines of those central areas. And then I've more or less moved Douglas Luiz into that attacking midfielder role, and this will inevitably make him either mark one of the centre backs or try and press one of the centre backs, or potentially try and take out the opposition's DM. And of course, most teams have a DM, so you want one of your central midfielders. This time I've gone with Douglas Luiz to try and mark very aggressively, and then of course it means that Kamara does hang back ever so slightly. So it's one goalkeeper, two centre backs, two fullbacks, one DM, two wider midfielders, one attacking midfielder, and then of course two strikers. So for the tactics, nothing has really changed. I will say that the only real difference between the base instructions and this is the ability for the players to get into the box. I've set it to 5 this time, and that means that it will mainly just be your front 2 as well as maybe an additional player breaking into the attacking third. So moving on to the instructions now, I will say this, your back 6 essentially with Martinez, your back 4 as well as Kamara, they all have the same set of instructions. There's no real changes to it. Obviously, you're trying to press from the front. It's a very aggressive press, so that's where the major changes do tend to come into play. So we'll start off with the likes of Tielemans and McGinn. They both have the same set of instructions as well, your wider midfielders. Both of them are set to come back on defense, looking to obviously help out when required from the back. Cutting inside and come short, it does allow them to be a bit more central with the build-up play going forward, as well as having the ability to aggressively press the opposition, making it very hard for them to try and play through the lines, and obviously trying to clog those passing lanes and whatnot. And then, of course, the support on crosses is set to a balanced approach. Sometimes being able to get into the box, other times not so much. And then, as you can see for the likes of John McGinn, he's got the same set of instructions as well. Onto the likes of Douglas Luiz in the number 10 role. Basically the same set of instructions as before. I will say this, staying on the edge of the box, coming back on defense is essential. Obviously looking to try and sit on the opposition's number 6 more times, not making it very uncomfortable for him to be as involved with the build-up play as possible. Aggressive interceptions are set to be on for him as well. And then finally into our front line now with Diaby and Watkins. They have got the same set of instructions with one tweak really. So both of them will be able to have the ability to drift in and out of those central areas as the two strikers, running the channels a bit more as well. Getting in behind though, no real changes to that. And then aggressive interceptions, looking to try and press the opposition's goalkeeper and backline very aggressively. And then for Watkins, he is set to stay forward, so being a bit more of the outlet ball, whereas the likes of Diaby, he has a bit more of a deeper starting position, and in order to try and replicate that, the basic defensive support is essential. So having the ability to sometimes hang up the field, other times looking to just drop a bit deeper, link up a bit more with the likes of Douglas Luiz. So yes, people, that is my version of Unai Emery's 4-4-1-1 tactics. These exact tactics that he used to dominate both Manchester City and Arsenal. Obviously, in the span of a few days, this team is working incredibly hard for their manager, proving that Unai Emery is not just some bum that didn't work out at Arsenal. He's proving to be an absolute outstanding, elite, world-class manager, especially now that he's got the structure and the style of football in this team. I think, you know what? Can they win the Premier League? I hope they can. Honestly, it would be another Leicester City type story. Maybe not to the level of Leicester City, but still, it would be a fantastic story. And it also stops both Arsenal, Liverpool, and Manchester City from winning the damn league. So, you know what? I back Villa this season because why? Manchester United aren't that good. I will say this though, guys, if you can get this video to 15 likes, I will consider dropping tomorrow the Aston Villa back 5 tactics that they've used throughout the course of the season in a variety of different games here and there. So, by the end of today, if it can hit 15 likes, that would be fan-damn-tastic. If not, well, I'll still release the video, but it'll probably be like next week, Friday. So yeah, it's up to you guys. Please hit that like button, hit the subscription button, and maybe as well, I might consider creating a realistic Aston Villa career mode set of ideas for you guys. So, until the next time, people, enjoy, smash that like button. I hope you have a damn great day. I'm out.